Hey guys, welcome back for another episode of The Suited Shootist. We are in the midst of summer weather here in Texas, so I'm wearing one of my favorite linen shirts. Linen is definitely one of my preferred hot weather fabrics. But what I want to talk about today is, I'm just going to jump into it because I don't want the thumbnail to be too much of a teaser. I did just buy a Kiton suit. I did not spend $10,000 on it. The channel's not doing quite that well yet, but it's something that I've wanted to have in my collection for a while. And just before I kind of go into the details of it, for those of you that are unfamiliar, because it is definitely somewhat of an esoteric brand, if you are not entrenched in the sartorial space, I just wanted to kind of pull a couple of excerpts from Hugo Giacome's The Italian Gentleman as to what makes Kiton so special. So he goes here and talks about describing Kiton, even for the traditional sartorial pen such as mine, is not an easy task. Almost everything in the company is overwhelming to comprehend. Which company has oysters sea farmed exclusively in order to produce the best mother of pearl possible for shirt buttons? Which company serves, for the price of €1 each, more than 300 three-course lunches every day, cooked by a real chef using special tomatoes from Mount Vesuvius? Which company pays its employees an average of 30 cents above the minimum wage in one of Italy's poorest areas? So, even just aside from the garment construction, there's a lot of care and attention to every aspect of the business. And in this section entitled The Kiton Suit, 25 hours and 45 tailors. Why 45 tailors? Because it takes 45 separate steps to make a suit, and every single step executed strictly by hand by a different person. That is really one of the critical differentiators, is all of this is hand sewn as opposed to machine sewn. So a lot more skilled labor goes into the construction, and obviously that means that they're producing far fewer units than they could with mechanized production. So, as you can imagine, it's a very exclusive brand. And so when I became aware of them, at first I was like, okay, they are just sort of this niche, and because they are exclusive, they carry a high premium, and it's just kind of a flex. After I got to handle one and try one on, there is a quantifiable and tangible difference in terms of the finished garment. But you guys aren't here to understand what makes Kiton special. You're trying to figure out why in the hell I would go and buy a $10,000 suit. So, so I'm not burying the lead, I paid $200 for this suit. And you're going to be trying to figure out how I did that. Well, it's fairly simple. Two things. Number one, I am more familiar with the brand than the average customer. And here is the jacket. The reason why it was so heavily discounted was because it's damaged. There's actually a fairly pronounced tear on the back of one of the sleeves. It's not quite on the seam. So the good news is I've got a really good tailor. And when I saw this listing come across, I pulled the pictures and said, hey, is this repairable? He said, yeah, it's going to require a complete reweave, but it's doable. So the thing was listed for $400. I made an offer for $200, and it was accepted. Now, obviously, once all is said and done, I'm not just going to be $200 out of pocket on this thing. Mercifully, the rest of it fits almost perfectly. It's a little tight in the seat and the thighs, so I'm going to have that let out just a touch. The restoration is really going to be the lion's share of the cost, depending on exactly what we're looking at. The repair is probably going to cost me another $400, maybe $500. So let's err on the high end. All in, I'm in $700 for a $10,000 suit if I were looking at this retail. So that means that I'm paying quite literally 7 cents on the dollar. It doesn't matter at what level you're talking about. Who's not going to take that deal? If you could walk into a shop and buy a genuine Rolex for under $1,000, I don't know a lot of people that wouldn't jump on that. If you walked into your gun shop and just they had no clue what they had, and there was a brand new Chambers Custom or Wilson Combat, not that they're the same thing, but I bring them both in because not everybody is familiar with the quality level that Chambers Custom brings to the table. But if they've got your preferred high-end pistol sit in the case for $300, you're going to jump on that deal. And that is how I have been able to build a good portion of my wardrobe, is with a little bit of education and having kind of a support team that can help me work stuff like this. Because there is no chance at all that, regardless of how successful the channel becomes or how successful the Patreon becomes, that I'm ever going to drop 10 grand on a suit. Now, the only exception to that would be I have a bucket list item where at some point I do want to go to Naples and actually get a true bespoke suit made. You really just can't get into those for less than about $10,000. But that's a long ways away. My point to this is I had polled the Bespoke Solutions Facebook group about a week ago as to kind of what their comfortable price point is that they would be willing to spend on a suit. $500 to $600 seemed to be the sweet spot. So why am I saying that? Well, think about this. There are some good options in that $500 to $600 price point if you're talking retail. But if you know where to look, you can get some absolute steals. And even if I go to sources that are buying last year's inventory and selling it on the secondary market, Kiton suits are still going for between $3,000 to $5,000. So to make that math easy, $700 to let's call it $2,800, I'm still paying 25 cents on the dollar. So there's virtually no circumstance where this is a downside, as long as it fits me initially. Now, you are not going to be able to find somebody that can do repairs like that just by walking into your local alterations shop or your local dry cleaner. I'm going to do a video kind of breaking down the different tailors and the different the alterists, whatever the noun version of that is, people that do alterations. Because it's an important distinction. You want to make sure that you're taking the garment to the appropriate place, because if not, somebody tries to overextend themselves, they can absolutely ruin a piece. And that defeats the whole purpose. So this is not a flex. I'm not here trying to brag or show off for two reasons. Number one is that for most of y'all, the fact that I now have this in my closet is completely inconsequential. And for the people that buy things like Kiton for purely the sake of it being exclusive and expensive, they're not going to be impressed because I bought a damaged one. But again, the point that I'm trying to drive home here is if you know what you're looking for, you can really maximize your dollar. And so I'm going to document the whole process. My patrons are going to get sort of first stab and early access to that material and probably a little bit more in-depth info on the process. But that's also part of the style consultation service that I offer to my black tie level patrons. Is I help people sort of either develop this understanding, or if they don't want to mess with it, I can kind of do some of the personal shopping for them as well. So there's a lot here to take advantage of. If you have questions on this, I absolutely want to hear about that down in the comments. Aside from that, I want to hear about your best thrift or consignment finds, because this has now unseated my Canali suit as the sort of the crown jewel of my wardrobe once I get it repaired. So, what do you think? Are you guys excited as I am? Because when I saw this come through my feed, my hands were almost literally shaking. I was so excited. So I'm very eager to see how the finished product turns out. And so, like I said, any questions you've got, put them down in the comments. And aside from that, hope it has a fantastic week. Stay dangerous and stay sharp.